I'm here with my friend Holly Salazar, come to us live from Nashville, Tennessee. How's it going this morning in Nashville, Holly?
Hey, what's up? It's going.
Awesome. Yeah, we just had a great conversation that no one got to hear. So maybe we'll come back around to that. And everyone was like, I wonder what they talked about. Well, Lord
Might
willing,
never
we'll get
know.
back around to that. But yeah, who knows? We talked about some cool stuff, but we're going to talk about some really cool stuff in this as well. So, Holly, you and I have written a bunch of songs together. I don't even honestly know how we got connected, but I'm glad that we did because it's always fun and a pleasure to write and work with you. Not only just songwriting, but also being a part of the Women in Worship songwriting events, virtual events and stuff. So it's been awesome to be a part of that ministry. So thanks for always inviting me into that. But
Anytime.
yeah, but I've been in Nashville for over 12 years now. So, I'd love to know, like, how did you kind of get started in music?
Yeah, 12 years. It seems like I live here forever. I'm from the middle of nowhere, Southern Illinois originally, but moved here, when I turned 18 for college. So I think I started playing guitar and writing songs around 13. Started leading worship in church around the same time, shortly after I figured out the guitar thing.
Yep.
I sounded good enough to play in church on a Sunday. But yeah, I mean, I've been writing for years, even before moving to Nashville at 18. Really just always wanted to be around music, like love songs, whether it's like listening to a vinyl record, playing guitar, writing a song, or now the admin side of things. So moved here, college started, 3 weeks later, had to get an internship.
Mm,
Ended up, Music Row for several publishing companies, but started out with Garth Brooks, his publishing management company that led to different things with the band Perry, some rock bands. There was like a minute where Taylor Swift was around. So
yeah.
really just had the country music experience, the full on Nashville. I moved here for this.
Mm,
Still was writing during those times, had some small like country pub deal stuff going on. Never had like a big cut in country music. They're all smaller artists. So it was always like 50-50 where it was songwriting, song admin, but I've really just loved each one of them. Both sides are so different. I think the song admin has definitely helped me as a writer though, just knowing everything on the business side, the publishing side, what to do has definitely helped in the writing aspect of things. But yeah, I just always loved songs, always loved music, still love vinyl records,
mm.
still my vinyl records from my mom. So it's all good.
That's great. Yeah. So, going from a small town to Nashville, but then working for the company that's with like one of the most legendary artists of all
Yeah.
time. Like, because a lot of people would love to know, like, what did you do? How did you kind of find your way in? And I know that some of that stuff is just God's provision for sure, but like,
Oh yeah.
how did you kind of end up from your first position is working for like a major publisher like that?
Yeah. Honestly, as a kid, I just, loved music, but super nerdy. Always read like the label copy info on the back of a CD, would take the
Yeah.
books out. And I just learned over time like who wrote what country song that I liked.
Mm,
Who was the writer? Who was their publisher? Where was that publisher located? If I was gonna move to Nashville, I was just determined to work for them. And so it happened. Totally a God thing that it happened though at 18 especially. But he really put me in a lot of great positions for even more opportunity to come. So honestly, yeah, just being a nerd and God was two of the biggest things that have helped me in the last 12 years of life in Nashville overall. But I still look at the label copy, like it's different now on Spotify, but I'll like double click and be like, who wrote that song? Who are they
mm,
with? All of the
yeah.
information. Like, I want to know who produced it. I want to know who mixed and mastered it. I need to know
Mm,
everything about this song, no matter what the genre is. So I think that was always something that would really help me because, working on the admin side of things, when clients and songs come over, I'm familiar with publishers that I wouldn't be familiar with had I not looked and like learned who's publishing what, where the song's
mm,
going, who's in the top 20, who's in the top 40, multiple genres, since we're writing in multiple genres. So that's always been
yeah.
really helpful as just the nerdy side of the admin things.
No, that's great. I've heard one of the biggest distinguishing qualities between an amateur and professional is attention to detail, So
Oh, for
I'm thinking
sure.
of it when you're saying like it's a roadmap for you. You weren't just like, I'm going to show up to Nashville and they're going to find me. Like you were targeted. You had created a map to where these are the people that I want to get into and
Right.
associate with. And it wasn't by, of course, God, like you said, set that up, but you were determined to get to that spot on the map. It wasn't just by
Yeah.
chance that you ended up there. So that's a really great thing for people to hear. It's more than just like, I'm going to move to Nashville because that's where I should be, and I'll get sucked into the magnetic pull, and next thing I know, I'll be exactly where I hope to be. Like, even with that, like, that didn't mean like it just, you were like instantly, like, even with all of your planning and research and quote unquote nerdiness, like it brought you to the door, but you still had to be able to get in, and they still had to like welcome you in to that door, because just
Yeah,
because you show up doesn't mean they're going to bring you in. So obviously there's a
absolutely.
lot of personality there, and there's a lot of just kind of knowing how to interact with people, right? I mean, how much have you found in Nashville, like, personality skills has like played a part in what you do?
It's the majority of what I do. I feel like because writing is people,
Yeah.
songwriting as a whole, people, song admin, people.
Mm.
Zoom is half of my life now. So, like you're always talking to somebody across the screen or on the phone. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it definitely is the majority of what we do, whether you're working with producers or you're working with artists, other co-writers behind the scenes, even with church, leading worship, you look how many people are in front of you on a Sunday. I think, yeah, people just having really good communication skills with that and just hard work. I think work ethic goes so far in this industry. So many people move to town, but we all play guitar. We
Yeah.
all write songs.
Yeah.
We all play guitar. You eventually have to be better than somebody else who's vying for the same position. At one time I think I just saw where there were 2,000 people signed to country music deals in the mid
Wow.
2000s, and now they're 200.
Wow.
So you're moving to Nashville, and you are one of thousands of people moving here every year,
Mm.
and you're trying to get one of 200 spots if you're wanting to do the writer thing, be signed, everything like that way. Yeah, it's
Right, which
crazy.
are held by Shane McAnally, and
I
these,
know.
they're not like just all of the
Yeah,
amateurs. Those 200 slots are held by the best writers in the world.
right. You maybe have 25 openings a year when somebody decides to leave their deal or not sign again to someone else, or just be done writing. Like they're kind of in their 40s or 50s. I think a lot of people stop writing. That's what I've seen in country music. I think now it's kind of like they're hanging around a little bit longer. But yeah, I think the average age was always in the like mid 40s
Hmm.
is when you would stop writing, stop your deals, either retire or find a new hobby.
Yeah.
Was what, you
Real
know,
estate, right? It's always real estate.
right? And that's a great hobby to have in Nashville right now. It's
This
crazy.
seems like it.
But all the writers, I mean, I worked on probably three different publishing companies before going to BMI and working for BMI, which is a whole other ball game of things
Yeah.
on the admin side. But I think it was the mid 40s when writers were just kind of done. They weren't getting big cuts anymore, finding that they were spending more time with their family, and it was kind of a bittersweet moment. I think when you're done writing, it just does it really ever leave you? It's never really left me, even though I've tried to quit it multiple times. I come right back. So, it's just kind of a bittersweet moment when that happens. But, I think back in the day too, songs lived longer. Now there may be 6 or 8 weeks at a number one slot, where back in the day you could have a song go number one for an entire year.
Hmm.
Shania Twain would be number one and Garth would be competing with her, and it would be like left and right all year long. How long are they going to stay in the top spot or the top five? And now you're like 6 weeks at a number one. Awesome. That's amazing. It's so different.
Yeah.
It keeps evolving and changing. And I think there are so many ways to be a writer in Nashville without having to have the deals now, whether you're a producer writer or you do admin or you lead worship and you're a writer. It's just really been more open than it has ever before, which is good and bad.
Yeah, the traditional, whatever that means, where you could be, signed as a writer and get like a deep cut on a record that went, triple platinum, and you could buy a house with that one
Yeah.
portion of one cut. It's not that way. And like you said, like maybe songs would hang out in the number one spot for a year, but album cycles were 2 years long.
Oh, yeah.
Now, like, single cycles maybe 4 weeks long or 2 months long, or whatever. So like, there's just such a faster turnover, because I started noticing this myself. Like in 2019, labels didn't start doing the single release drip thing yet. They were still kind of operating as if
Yeah,
releasing, physical copies. But then once they did, then you start seeing this song releasing, and then this song's remix releasing the following week, and then this song's alt version the next week. And like labels figured that out. So then they began to start dominating on, streaming and playlists as well. But like you said, it's always evolving. So those slots, although it never before could you, potentially record a song in your house and it can get millions or even billions of streams at times, without the support of
absolutely.
massive $1 million campaigns from major labels, although
Right.
it can be a narrow way, it still exists. I don't think when it ever has before. Right.
Right. Yeah. And I think you just hit the nail on the head there too, with just everything is so digital. Like you live in Florida, you don't live in Nashville. I
Right.
have several producer friends who live in Louisiana, they live in Pennsylvania, and they're still, writing songs and producing, making a living and supporting their families and
Right.
doing very well at it. And they haven't been to Nashville in a long, like maybe once or twice a year,
Hmm.
and everything is on Zoom. We can send tracks back and forth through Logic, through email, through Dropbox. And it's really just opened up a lot. And especially, I mean, we were talking about this before we started, but, especially with church, the music in
Mm.
church is just changing so much. And it's broadening the genre. Now you have like 18 subgenres. You've got Jesus music, but then you got CCM, you got worship, you got pop CCM, like you got pop worship, all these different things
Yep.
coming along. And then you got a metal Bethel song. So like where
Yep.
everyone's kind of got their own special taste and variety for songs now, but it's really opened up a lot. And it makes me think back to like
Hmm.
the old like hymns. They were so like
Mm.
Fanny Crosby wrote thousands of songs in her lifetime with her and like maybe one or two other people. And we were doing that
Mm.
now. We're doing that with whoever we're
Yeah.
connected with. And Zoom and Facebook and Instagram have allowed us to connect. I'm pretty sure that's how we met, was like on Instagram or something. So, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
you're just looking at where are we at right now with music, and kind of just gauging, what's to come. Technology is advancing all of that for us in every genre.
Mm.
And, you don't officially have to move to Nashville to do anything at this point. Like it's helpful to be in Nashville, don't get me wrong. It's helpful to come
Sure.
meet and connect with people. I hate to use the word networking, but really it's kind of like a networking thing sometimes when you're trying to get in the door with labels, publishers, things like that. But, it's just meeting more people. I think, if you're friends with artists or churches, you're probably going to get a cut faster than you would being signed,
Mm.
anywhere else. That's what I found. And just with my own stuff in the long run, it's just knowing people, connecting with them, having good relationships, and you find yourself getting cuts right and left, whereas you didn't have to
Mm.
necessarily go into the studio, you didn't have to drive downtown, you didn't have to have that set
Mm.
up. It's just keeping your connections pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, it thins out the barriers, right? Because if you write with, said worship leader who releases music and also leads worship on Sundays, basically, as long as they like and believe in the song, like that's the only barrier, a part of them recording. If they produce themselves or know somebody, like they'll have the song out
Yeah,
and you have a cut. But if you start going the label route, which obviously can have greater reach potentially, and there's pros and
yeah,
cons to every side, but
for sure.
there's a committee of people that are going to sift through those songs and they're going to put money behind the song. So yeah, I'd say getting cuts, especially indie cuts, like you said, is just it's all who the people that you know and the people that you write with. And so I
Yeah,
love that, because so many people are like, how do I get my songs cut? It's like, well, what do you mean? Because do you mean how do I get my songs on the radio? Because that's a different type of cut than how do you get your
yeah.
songs on Spotify,
Or
So
YouTube, or in a church, just
right.
anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like people ask me that every week, and you just totally explained it. But it's true, like people will send me demos every week and like, hey, can you listen to this? Can you give it to an artist? And I'm like, well, did you write it with an artist in mind? Did you write, like, who did you write it for? Did you write it for you? Do you know somebody where you're at? Because the odds of me getting your song cut are very low. I
Mm.
can send it to somebody, but whether they're in the market for it is one thing. Is it fitting their sound is another. And are they actually gonna take it because they didn't write on it? Most every artist wants to be a writer on a song now, or have
Hmm.
some kind of creative thought process to the writing or the production of it. And a lot of times too, like, you have to be willing, like, if you're gonna pitch a song to an artist, you have to be willing to have them come in as a 3rd or 4th or 5th writer sometimes. Like, they
Hmm.
might wanna rewrite that bridge that you think is amazing, but if you want the cut, a lot of times you have to get the song, with them on it. So, I think
Yeah,
there's so many just different variables around, but, having a network of people and just connecting and growing that network and continuing to write with new writers, new churches, new artists, that I think is always what's going to get you cuts.
man.
Yeah,
I just Have you ever read The Go Giver, the book?
I've not. Who wrote that?
It's two guys of gosh, Bob and I'm actually going to send it to you because you got to read it
Do
because it's
it.
awesome. Yeah,
I'll read
I
it.
will.
My nerd will love it.
Your nerd will. Yeah, it's great. Not the go getter, the go giver, and it's all about the principle of giving, like full value, being concerned with other people, and it's honestly the way that
Yeah,
we're basically called to live as Christians. Honestly, but one of
right.
this, it's a parable too, which is great because I love those style of business books that are like parables. But there's a character in it, and basically she says like selling or influence is 10% skill and 90% personality, and that's kind of, I feel
For
like, the tone of what
sure.
we've been talking about here. It's like, yeah, you have to be good at that thing, otherwise what do you wouldn't even be here. Like, there's no reason, you have to have some level of talent, but it's 90%. You can be, you know,
Yeah,
an okay writer or an okay producer or an okay artist, but if you're buds with some people that level you up, then like that's the way that your songs are gonna elevate and you're gonna just explode because you're actually around people that are making you better. But it's not just you. I mean, sure, there's the I Can Only Imagines where it's like one person wrote this song that like, rocked the world. Sure, but that's like extremely
so
rare.
small. Yeah,
Even like
yeah,
Bieber, he's got 9 writers on his songs, like, and he's like the biggest artist, one of the biggest artists in the world, and he's got 9 people on the song. So obviously it doesn't matter how talented you are, it's the people that you're around. So I love that
absolutely.
as a reminder because yeah, that's exactly what you're saying. The Nashville experience is just that. So no,
Yeah,
I didn't actually prep you for this, so this will be fun. But you've talked about the admin side, and so many people are like, "Hey, like, how do I, do I need to
yeah,
get things copywritten?" There's like and people, it's like the dark horse of the whole thing. So, like, how would you explain like the admin side and the importance I know that you have a whole thing of this, and I definitely want you to talk about that like at the end so people can find it. But like the admin side, like explain that, like what is that and how important is that at someone's music journey?
yeah. I think the admin, it starts, with your PROs, like getting established with BMI or ASCAP. If you're in a foreign country, you have your own PRO there that you can find. But just collecting your royalties, it
Mm,
starts with PROs, and then, copyright is spending money and not necessarily collecting money back, but
mm,
you're protecting your song with that. So that's
yeah.
going to cost you. Then you've got things like CCLI in Christian music. Like if you're affiliated with CCLI as a writer, publisher, or church, you're collecting those songs that are licensed on Sunday. Especially if you're writing for your own church, you can still license those songs. So you're getting royalties from that. Sound exchange, there's like Harry Fox
Mm,
is a licensing company you can use to license songs further. So I think you're just really keeping track of where's the song going, where's the money coming in from it, and keeping all of your ducks in a row. I think there's so many writers that I'm friends with that, like, they don't have the song registered anywhere, and the only money they're making from it is like they happen to be the artist or the church releasing it, and they're
yeah.
getting money back in DistroKid or TuneCore, CD Baby, whatever they're using for distribution. But then they're missing out on this whole other world and all these missing puzzle pieces over here
Mm,
that, you're spending all this money to record the song and release it or market it, how whatever you're doing with it, but then you're not making money back and you're kind of like scratching your head, where is it coming from? Like, how do I keep doing this? And it's really, well, did you register at all the places you needed to collect that money? And
mm,
it's a little different depending on what genre. Country music, you wouldn't use CCLI, but
right.
in worship, your CCLI pays you more money than anyone else because you're probably not going to have it on the radio. You're probably just going to be playing it more so in a church setting or churches in your area, or your friends are going to play it at their church. And you're kind of like, well, I put all this effort into it. Where's it coming? So yeah, it's just real. I boil it down to stewardship, honestly. It's just making sure that your song is fully stewarded well from the moment that you wrote it to what are you doing with it afterwards, whether it's released on radio, TV, church. There's something to do with that song after you write it, no matter what. And that's why, we did make that course, the Writing Worship Song Admin course last year, just to teach people how to do admin, like every aspect from you wrote a song. Now what in the world do we do with it? How do we make some money back to
Yeah.
keep doing what we're doing? So it's been pretty good so far. I think we've actually gone global with it now, which is awesome. And so we
Wow.
put like an international section in it because
Cool.
international PROs are different than, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC here in the US. And international royalties can be collected differently with radio and TV as well. So, and
Wow.
YouTube. Yeah. So it's been honestly probably the best thing that I've ever done from
Wow.
moving to Nashville, whether it's writing or getting cuts, whatever. Like you can only do so much and win so many things and be in so many rooms, but it's been awesome to just teach people how to steward their catalogs well, how to
Mm.
keep doing this, how to grow. Because I think so much of being a good writer too is doing the admin side. And not all of us have publishers. Most of us are indie writers. I'm
Mhm.
independent fully again, and I'm actually loving it. So I am for the no signer people right now. But yeah, it's been great, and it's just a good place to go when you're trying to figure out what do I do? Because you can look on YouTube, but is the person accurate? Like, do they have experience doing what they're doing? Or
Yeah.
this is their first time registering the song too? Or are you fully getting all of your royalties coming back in all the different avenues? So,
No, I'll definitely link that below in the, whether it's on YouTube or on, if you're listening on streaming or wherever podcast platform, I'll link it below so that way we can make sure that you can find the course and, ask Holly any questions you have, but definitely will
yeah,
help you be able to keep track. And like, I love that idea of stewarding. It's not just like, oh, you have to fill it out just because you have to do it. Like, no, it's for a
right.
purpose. It's like I have a cool example. Like I got a report, and I think it was a CCLI report, and like one of my songs had generated like, it wasn't a lot of money, but like there's a church in like Taiwan that plays like one of the Christmas original songs I wrote, like enough to
Amazing.
generate money. And like, I would never known that. Not it's
Yeah,
not a financial thing. It's like, for me, it's like the impact thing. It's like, are you serious? Like there's people in countries that I'll never maybe go to that are like using this song to like connect with God. Like
absolutely.
there's nothing more powerful than that, like to me. So like, that's so the stewardship aspect. It's like, it's so important because if you don't have registration and all that, you'll never know what global impact your
Right.
music actually makes. So yeah,
Yeah,
make sure to check
absolutely.
the link and go talk to Holly about how you can figure that stuff out for your songs. And on that note, on the songwriting, so one of the things I wanted to talk about too is, and this was a while ago, so you give me an updated number here, but
Oh
Holly
gosh.
did a post and she said that she had just written with her 1,000th co-writer. 1,000, not 1,000th song, 1,000th co-writer. So and that was a while ago. So it's way more than that now. But a lot of us may never write 1,000 songs. We might be writing our first song. We might be writing 10 songs. Who knows? Wherever you are on the journey, that's fine. Just keep going. That's how you get better at it. So with
Yeah.
that though, I asked Holly to think about some common attributes of good co-writers, because we can all be good. We can all be better. We talked about personality and things like that. But like, so when you're going into a co-writing room, I think that Holly's perspective is so powerful just because she's worked with so many people. So, whatever you have kind of thoughts on this, Holly, just to like express that, and like your experience, and like what kind of makes a good co-writer. What are some personality traits that you've seen along your journey that have really helped successful co-writing relationships?
Honestly, I'm losing track of all the numbers on anything these
Yeah.
days. I officially have mom brain now. So,
There you go.
um,
Yes, that's awesome.
yeah, I mean, oh man, I started so young co-writing, like even in a small town, co-writing with friends or churches in the middle of nowhere, or my church did songs. So
Yeah.
13, now 30. So that's a good 17 years of co-writing with a lot of different people. A
Wow.
lot of those years have been full-time in the industry in Nashville, multiple genres. So it's a little wild to think about, but honestly, I think the best thing is just being yourself in the room. Like we can't be Garth Brooks. Garth is already taken. As
Yeah.
awesome as he is, I can't be him, and nor do I really want to be. Like I think just being who you are is really valuable because nobody else in the room has your experiences or your testimony or your ideas. They have no idea what's going on in your mind. So I think that's always been the number one thing for me is just like be as much of myself as I possibly can. And that helps me, like be the kind of writer that you want to write with. Like nobody wants a writer that's like super showy or embellishes everything. Nobody wants a boring co-writer. Nobody wants a messy I think
Yeah.
it's just being the kind of writer that you want to write with in the room. Like I want
Mm.
somebody who has really great ideas and they contribute. I don't want to be the only person in the room throwing out ideas. And granted, that happens sometimes. Like, no
Sure.
write is the same. I have really bad writing days. I have really good writing days. So it just kind of, you got to go with the flow. But it just, being consistent is probably one of the number one things. Showing up on time or letting people know that you're going to be late. Don't just roll into the room 20 or 30 minutes later or pop on Zoom 30 minutes later and everybody's like, well, we've just been piddling around wasting time. Where have you been? Like, are you
Yeah.
okay? Are
Yeah.
you stuck in traffic? Is usually the thing in Nashville, but just being consistent, showing up on time, letting people know if you're going to be late. Um, I think being honest too, not just like, like avoiding lying or anything like that, but I think just being honest with yourself. Just honestly, does the line sound good? Like, or is this the right line for the song, or did somebody else beat out your line and you just want your line to stay in the song or your
Yeah.
melody idea, but the song needs to move on past that?
Mm.
And just honestly what is best for the song or being willing to adapt and change as the song kind of morphs into what it's supposed to be. And honestly, if you have a line that you love and they're cutting it out and you still love it, go write a song about it later. Just say, I'll use this later, arsenal for the next one, or
Yeah.
write it with the artist again. Yeah, I mean, I don't have all the correct answers, but I
Yeah.
think those will get you pretty far.
No, that's great. And I'm hearing like humility feels
Yeah.
like a lot of that, like being yourself, like realizing that I always think of like co-writes as like a sociology experiment, especially like when you're doing like for the
Yes,
first time, like with multiple people, like, I don't know how this is going to
absolutely.
go, but like if you show up and you're yourself, I don't understand. It's so hard for all of us, myself included, to like just be ourselves. I mean, I think the older we get, the easier that becomes. But especially
Yeah,
starting out, like you feel like you need to like you have to be what you feel like they want you to be or something, and like
exactly.
that just ends up like wasting time, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean 18, 19, 20 years old in a new town. Definitely I overcompensated for so many different things and felt like I needed to fit, X, Y, and Z to get
Mm,
signed. And what, from both sides of the desk, whether writing side or as a publisher or work, admin side, being yourself is really what they want. Like
mm,
we're not looking to sign the same person twice. We want you for what you bring to the table and, your uniqueness. And that's what comes out in songs too. Like
mm,
I don't know if you do this, but this is probably the nerd coming out again. But I just love, like, I can listen to country songs and I'm like, oh, Shane wrote that song. It
mm.
sounds like Shane. Or
Yeah.
this is a Brandon Lake song. I know Brandon wrote that song. Like, you just start listening and learning after a while writers, and it's like your writing comes out in the song, and
Yeah.
that song goes on to bless all these other people,
Hmm.
and that's what comes out. It's you, it's not somebody else. There can't be two Brandons on the song or two Shanes on the song.
Yeah.
And I think you explained it perfectly. Is it's just like the humble side of things too. And I have been humbled over the years. The Lord has continued to humble me over the years from a lot of different things. So, but yeah, now looking from 18-year-old to 30-year-old is definitely,
Mm.
there's a lot of experience learned. There's a lot of
Yeah.
bad things that have happened. There's a lot of great things that have happened, a lot of failures, but just be you.
Mm. And I feel like something that I've never thought about this before, so you just said that, but like I feel like that's what labels like A&Rs and publishers, that's one of their gifts is they can recognize authenticity, you
Yeah,
know, because they can kind of see people that might be trying to be that thing. But like you said, there's a roster, they're filling a role. It's nothing personal. It's just if your true you fits the role that they're looking for, the only way they're going to figure that out, other than their own discernment, is if you are being yourself. Otherwise they have to
yeah,
kind of navigate through the facade or whatever. And it may not be negative, it may just be insecure. I mean, we're all that way. I mean, I've been there, we've been there. But I feel like that is something, because I always wonder, like, how do you get a publishing deal? Like, what is the magical door? And everybody wants to know that question. Everyone wants to know the answer to the question. But I think it's
yeah,
just what you said. It's like you just present your true self in everything you do, in every co-write, in every gig, in every release, whatever capacity you find yourself in. And then I feel like those people that may be looking for somebody that brings your unique skill set will find you. It's not about like, how do I find them? It's they find you. Would you say that's true most of the time? Is publishers find artists? It's not the other way around.
I feel like they find artists and writers more than the writer can knock on their door and come in and sign with them. For
Yeah,
sure. I mean that, 30, 40 years ago, that was more of a thing when there was more openings. I think
sure.
now, I mean, you really won't get signed anywhere or even looked at unless you have a song that's done something.
Mm,
They look at stream. You can't have, as an artist, if you have less than 10,000 streams, probably no one's really looking at you seriously from a label perspective. What are you doing to secure a deal? Like if you're wanting one, are you touring? Do you have a fan base? Like there's so many different elements that they want to look at. Same with a church. Like, is your church 200 people or is it 20,000 people or 2,000 people? I
hmm
think a lot of churches are trying to get signed to deals to get their music out there, and there's good and bad things and ways to do that for sure.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing, like what are you doing now? What do you have? Where are you at? If your foundation is just starting out, odds are very low. If you've been working at it for a while and you've kind of got a good foundation going and you're starting to build the house on it, odds
Mm.
are they're going to talk to you or at least be open to give you advice and have a conversation, whether they're concerned with signing you or not. That'll play out on itself. They'll let you know for sure. But even to get a meeting with somebody these days, you can't necessarily just roll into town.
And like never before were all of our stats public, right? Like back in the day, if you
Right.
were a band that was making some noise, like they would send an A&R to fly out to see you play a gig or something. But now they just go to Spotify and they can see. And of course, we're not, that can be
Yeah.
vanity metrics, but at the same time, has to be some sort of a bar for them to invest time, because, like you said, there's only such a limited space. They have to know that you have some traction without them, to know that when they bring themselves into your world, they can take that and push to the next level. But if you don't have those initial
Yeah.
stats, but like you said too, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. That means start with who you know and who you have, right, with your group of people, and because
Absolutely.
in the same Go Giver book, it's like the principle of 250. It's like every person will have roughly 250 people show up to their wedding or their funeral or something like that. But like that expands and that compound interest. So the more people the more 250 person spheres that you find. And now with social media, it's probably honestly bigger than that, right? So
Oh,
like
sure.
the more people that you know and interact with, the greater possibility that like something will pop off way down, because you never know. I mean, honestly, I know that you've had this experience too. Like you'll write a song years ago and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, that artist just released it, like, but if you hadn't written that song 2 years ago, it wouldn't be out, right? So it's just that
For
repetitive
sure.
thing, doing it over and over again.
And I would also say this, and I said this to someone recently who was complaining that they were just sitting on a pile of songs. And,
Mm,
for me, I've just learned that no song is a waste of anything. You're getting better while writing it. You don't know if the person in the room was the person that needed that song that day, or they needed to get that off their chest, or it could have been a God moment, depending what
Yeah.
genre you're writing in, you know? And I think no song is really a waste. Like, yes, we get frustrated sitting on songs. Like, I have thousands of songs.
Yeah.
Hundreds of them may get cut. They may not. They may sit there, but I've probably grown my connections by writing. I could write a song today and that person could be like, "Hey, you should go write with this person." That's how your community and your network grows. You know, like you showed up, you still did the work. The song might be okay and not great, but you were still there. You know, you spent the time, you did it, you stewarded it well.
Hmm.
And so now, there's blessings to come after that. So I always think too, like, if you're struggling, oh, I'm not signed, like that doesn't always matter. Like, where are you at? I think that goes back to the honesty of like, where are you at? Where am I at? And being signed isn't always the best thing. You know, there's stipulations to being signed. There's things you can or can't do while signed. And there's things you can or can't do because you don't have the funding if you're not signed. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just really coming down to like, where am I at? What do I have? But, you got to start somewhere, and somewhere is better than nowhere. So,
No, that's really good. And it's just, that's the reality is like not every person, every trajectory is its own thing. Some people need and it may be their style. They may have that pop lean that you need to be a popular artist that needs label backing, but there's other people that may never need that. And through streaming, that's what one of the things we're talking about before too, is like it's possible that you can be a worldwide phenomenon musically from recording a song in your bedroom these days, which is never possible before,
happens all the time now,
right?
literally.
And with things like TikTok, I mean, overnight. It can actually be overnight
Yes.
at times, like one of the guys we interviewed on the podcast, Ben Lane, he's a guy that I know he's been releasing songs for a while. He's been doing a lot of things. He just released this one video, got like over 8 million views on TikTok. And then like next
Whoa.
thing you know, he's flying to LA and talking to labels, and
Yep.
like because of one thing.
Oh, yeah.
He'd been working for years, so it wasn't like it just happened overnight. But because of the way the algorithms work, it's possible, but only if we're outputting wherever we are, like the lowest hanging fruit thing. Like take what you have
Right.
and just do that and keep doing it. And you'll level up as you go, but like you have to just do it. That's what I'm hearing
Right.
from you is like you got to show up. You have to know what you're heading towards and just show up and keep doing it over and over again.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I love that. Well, one thing I like to ask, and there's been so much already, but any like piece of advice that you give to your younger Holly, maybe before you moved to Nashville, maybe in the midst of it, maybe yesterday, but like a piece of advice that you give your younger self to help you and anyone listening on their music journey.
I think it goes back to the honesty thing for me,
Mm,
just always being honest with yourself, with people, with your craft. It's probably the number one thing that I've learned over the years. Um, And I think too, just don't fear failure. Like we don't get it right every single time we do something. That would be amazing, but how boring would we be? Where would we learn anything? And
mm,
I mean, you can have a terrible day as a writer, but then the next day you're like, I wrote 3 songs in an hour and they're all getting cut and this is the
yeah.
best day ever, like, or you get a giant placement, one day you've had a terrible month. And I think just don't have that fear, Like, I think people remember failures here and there in the writing room, but they usually remember you and your personality more than they remember like, "Oh, you were terrible today." Like we all have a little bit of grace. I
Yeah.
hope people have a lot of grace some days, depending what the day is. So, yeah, I was just coming back to honesty and just do it, I just if
Yeah.
you're gonna sit on it, then what's the point?
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's so strong because like you said, if you're in the writing room and you're being yourself, like we're human. So we resonate with that. It's not like but if you show up and
Right.
you're like, "Oh man, I'm the best. I've got this cut. I've got this going on, blah blah blah." And then you're not that good, you're probably not going to get a call from those people again.
Yeah.
But anybody can change. You don't have that doesn't have to be who you are. You can show up and maybe have a bad day or maybe be a mediocre day or
Yeah.
whatever. But if you were real and you connected with your co-writers, like that's the truth. And that's the thing is those are the songs that connect with people because they're actually saying something that's real instead of just like, a cool idea or what could be. It's authentic.
Oh yeah.
I appreciate that, and I think that's really valuable to anybody listening. And this has been great. I loved hanging out, and it was great to share.
Always.
And yeah, we gave them some of that pre-combo, so it kind of came out there too. So
It
I feel
circled
good about it.
back.
Yeah, it always comes back around. So that's awesome. Well, before we go, I'd love for you to tell people how to connect with you. Also, where they can find the course and all that stuff. So just let the people know how they can find you and connect with you.
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. I guess that's where the kids go these days. But
Yeah.
it's at holly.a.salazar on Facebook as well, or hollysalazar.com is kind of where I've just learned to put everything. Find the song admin course. You can ask questions about admin or writing, things like that. You can find if I'm speaking at a conference or something. So yeah, just Instagram or the website.
Cool. And also, we didn't really touch on this other than I mentioned it earlier, but Holly also is a part of the Women in Worship movement, so
Yeah.
you guys do all kinds of conferences and things there too. So I'm sure you can find links to all that through your website as well, most likely.
Yeah, or womeninworship.live is our website, and Instagram's the same at womeninworship.live.
Cool. And I'll put all these links below so no one has to remember all this stuff. But yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so they'll find you, and that's great. But before we go, I'd love to pray over you and your ministry before we go.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
God, thank you so much for Holly. Thank you so much for all that she's doing and stewarding the gifts that you've given her well over these years in this music journey in Nashville. And even before that, God, that all the people that she's touched through her ministry and through just co-writing and all the relationships that she's built, that'll continue to multiply and ultimately bring glory back to you through all of those things, God. Whether it's the admin course, whether it's the songwriting, whether it's the women in worship stuff, whatever it is, that it all comes back to you through you. And thank you for her just faithfully stepping into each thing that she does, and letting fear just fall to the side and just being honest and humble and just letting that be enough, God, because that's all you've asked us to be, is to be ourselves. So thank you so much for her and her family and all that she's doing. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.